My child, do not scroll away from this moment. Something has just shifted in a place you cannot see, and what has come to light carries your name more deeply than you realize. Stay here, because the truth your soulmate has only just begun to understand is not about a grand gesture you displayed for the world, not about words you demanded they remember, and not about anything you ever expected to receive credit for. It is about something you did quietly. Something you carried without announcing it. Something you chose when nobody was watching. And now, the person connected to your heart has discovered a piece of that hidden story. Their reaction was not what anyone around them expected. In fact, for a few moments, they could barely respond at all. There are acts of love that make noise, and there are acts of love that disappear into silence. Yours disappeared into silence. You did not stand before them and say, "Look at what I sacrificed for you." You did not keep a record so you could use it later. You did not turn your care into a debt they would someday have to repay. You simply saw something approaching them emotionally, something that could have wounded their confidence, disturbed their peace, or pulled them into a situation they were not ready to carry, and you made a choice. You stepped into the unseen space between them and that burden. They never knew. For a long time, they were never supposed to know. Perhaps that is why this revelation has touched them so deeply. They had formed an incomplete picture of you. They knew certain things about your heart, but they did not know the entire depth of it. They remembered moments when you seemed distant. They remembered times when you did not explain yourself. They remembered decisions that confused them. There may even have been moments when they wondered why you stayed silent when speaking would have made you look better. They interpreted some of that silence as indifference. They thought perhaps you had stopped caring. But what they have just learned has forced them to revisit those memories from an entirely different angle. Listen carefully, because this is where the story begins to change. Someone mentioned something they were never expecting to hear. It may have happened through a conversation, an old message, a forgotten detail, or a person finally deciding that enough time had passed to speak openly. Your soulmate heard your name connected to a moment from the past, and at first they did not understand why it mattered. They almost dismissed it. Then another detail followed. That detail made them quiet. Then came another. And suddenly, a memory that had never made sense began arranging itself into a completely different picture. They asked a question. The answer changed the atmosphere. Because what they were told revealed that when they believed they had been standing alone, you had been closer than they knew. When they thought a certain situation simply worked itself out, there had been something happening behind the scenes. When they believed someone had unexpectedly softened, reconsidered, stepped away, or chosen not to burden them, there had been a reason. And somehow, your fingerprints were on that reason. You never told them. That is the part they cannot stop thinking about. Why would someone protect another person and then hide the evidence of it? Why would someone accept being misunderstood rather than expose what they had done? Why would someone allow the person they cared about to believe a simpler story when the truth would have made them look loyal, brave, or deeply loving? Those questions are circling in your soulmate's heart now, because they reveal something greater than the original act itself. They reveal your intention. You were not performing love. You were living it. And there is a difference. Anyone can be affectionate when affection is being rewarded. Anyone can appear devoted when people are watching. But hidden loyalty has a different weight. It asks for nothing. It protects without applause. It chooses the other person's peace even when there is no guarantee of recognition. Your soulmate is beginning to understand that there was a side of your love they never witnessed because it was never designed to be witnessed. This discovery has unsettled something inside them, but not in a fearful way. It has unsettled an old belief. There was a story they had told themselves about you, perhaps for weeks, months, or even longer. Maybe they believed you walked away too easily. Maybe they believed you did not fight hard enough. Maybe they thought your silence meant you had emotionally detached before they did. Maybe they wondered whether everything they felt had been one-sided. But the new truth does not fit that old story. That is why they went quiet. Their mind began moving backward through everything. That night you suddenly stopped arguing. That message you never answered. That moment you chose not to defend yourself. That time someone around them seemed to change their attitude unexpectedly. That strange situation that almost became painful but somehow ended before it reached them. They are seeing those moments differently now. And one particular memory is troubling them more than all the others. There was a moment when you could have told them the truth. You were close enough. The opportunity was there. A single sentence could have changed how they saw you. Yet you kept it inside. Your soulmate is realizing now that you deliberately chose not to burden them with knowledge that might have made them feel guilty, indebted, or responsible for what you had endured. That realization touched a place in them that explanations never could. Because, my beloved child, your soulmate has spent more time than you know wondering whether anyone would ever care for them without eventually demanding something in return. They may not speak about this openly. They may appear strong, independent, even difficult to reach emotionally. But beneath those layers lives someone who has learned to question motives. They have seen kindness become leverage. They have seen affection become pressure. They have watched promises transform into expectations. And because of that, they learned to protect themselves. Then they discovered what you did. Quietly. Without payment. Without recognition. Without using it to pull them closer. And suddenly they were staring at proof of something they had almost stopped believing existed. This is why their reaction says more than their words. At first, they tried to stay composed. The person telling them the story may not even have understood how deeply it was affecting them. Your soulmate listened, asked for clarification, perhaps even responded with disbelief. Are you sure? They needed to hear it again because the truth contradicted what they had assumed for so long. Then came the moment that changed everything. They learned what the situation had cost you. Not necessarily money. Not necessarily something visible. The cost may have been emotional. You might have accepted blame. You might have allowed someone to think poorly of you. You might have swallowed words you desperately wanted to say. You might have stepped back when every part of your heart wanted to step forward. You might have carried stress alone so they could remain untouched by it. Whatever the form, there was a cost. And when your soulmate understood that, they could no longer pretend this was a small detail. They asked, "Why didn't they tell me?" That question came differently. Softer. Slower. Almost as though they were no longer speaking to the person in front of them, but to you through the distance. "Why didn't you tell me? Why did you let me misunderstand you? Why did you let me believe you didn't care? Why didn't you ask me to see what you were carrying?" Those questions are not accusations now. They are grief over lost understanding. They are the sound of someone realizing they may have judged a chapter before reading all of it. Heaven sees the difference between what was seen and what was true. Your soulmate only saw the surface of certain moments. They saw your withdrawal but not your reason. They saw your calmness but not the storm you had already absorbed. They saw you say, "It's okay," without knowing what it had taken for you to reach those words. They saw you stop explaining yourself, but they did not know you were protecting their peace even from the truth of your own sacrifice. And now those missing pieces are returning. There is something else they have discovered too. Your protection was not about controlling their choices. This matters. You did not secretly act so you could decide their life for them. You did not try to isolate them, manipulate them, or make them dependent upon you. What you did came from a simpler place. You saw a situation that could cause unnecessary damage, and you tried to reduce the harm without turning yourself into the hero of the story. That distinction has reached them. They know the difference between control and care. And this was care. Your soulmate has been replaying one sentence in their mind. It may have been spoken by whoever revealed the truth. It may have come from a message they read. It may have emerged from a detail they suddenly remembered. But the meaning was unmistakable. You never wanted them to know. That sentence broke through their defenses. Because if you never wanted them to know, then you could not have done it for praise. If you never wanted them to know, then it was not an attempt to earn your way back into their life. If you never wanted them to know, then the act existed even without reward. And that is what has left them emotionally exposed. There are people who can ignore words. There are people who can dismiss promises. But evidence has a different power. Your soulmate can debate what you once said. They can question whether a look meant what they thought it meant. They can reinterpret conversations. But this hidden act is harder to explain away because it existed outside their awareness. It happened when no reaction from them was available. That truth is changing something. Not everything at once. Do not mistake a powerful realization for an instant resolution. Real hearts do not always transform in a single dramatic second. Sometimes the deepest changes begin in silence. Sometimes the person sits alone after everyone leaves. Sometimes they stare at the wall and replay what they heard. Sometimes they open an old conversation, scroll backward, stop on a message they once ignored, and read it again with new eyes. Your soulmate has reached that kind of moment. They are going backward. Back to your words. Back to your choices. Back to the times you seemed to know something was wrong before they said anything. Back to the days when you gave them space even though it hurt you. Back to the strange ways you tried to protect their dignity when things became complicated. And with every memory, another question rises. How much else did I never know? That is the open door now. Because the secret they discovered may not be the only hidden act of love. There were other moments, weren't there? Moments you chose not to reveal because you did not want love to become a scoreboard. You remember at least one of them. A conversation you redirected. A harsh opinion you refused to repeat. A situation where someone tried to pull you into speaking against them and you would not participate. A time you could have embarrassed them with the truth and chose silence instead. A moment you defended their heart even when they were not defending yours. You may have thought those things disappeared. They did not. Nothing done from genuine love simply disappears. It becomes part of who you are. It shapes the energy of the story. It influences choices, memories, and sometimes, much later, revelations. That later moment has begun. But there is still something your soulmate does not understand. They know what you did. They do not yet know why you did it. They are trying to answer that question with logic, but logic is failing them because they know how complicated things were between you. They remember the tension. They remember uncertainty. They remember moments when you had every reason to protect yourself instead. And yet you protected them. Why? That is the question that is reaching deeper than anything else. Your soulmate may have thought your feelings were temporary. Maybe they convinced themselves that your connection mattered more to them than it did to you. Perhaps when things became difficult, they assumed whatever existed between you had faded. But now they have evidence that during one of those difficult periods, you were still considering their well-being. That means your care survived a moment they thought had destroyed it. Do you understand why that shakes someone? It does not simply tell them you cared. It tells them when you cared. During confusion. During distance. During misunderstanding. Possibly even when they were upset with you. That changes the emotional meaning of the entire story. Their reaction has become more intense because another realization followed. They remember how they treated you around that time. This is the part they wish they could avoid. When they believed you were indifferent, perhaps they became colder. When they believed you had done nothing, they may have judged you unfairly. When someone else spoke about you, they may have failed to defend you as strongly as they should have. Maybe they did not ask the questions that would have revealed your side. Maybe they simply accepted what looked obvious. Now they know appearances lied. And they are asking themselves whether they failed to see the person who was quietly trying to shield them. This does not mean they hate themselves. It means regret has entered the room. Regret is powerful when it becomes honest. Not the kind that says, "I wish things were different," and then changes nothing. The deeper kind asks, "What was I unable to see because of my own fear?" That is the question your soulmate is beginning to confront. They are seeing their own defenses. They are remembering how quickly they sometimes shut down when emotions become too real. They are recognizing that some of the distance between you may not have been caused by lack of love, but by two people protecting themselves in opposite ways. You protected by staying silent. They protected by assuming the worst before hope could disappoint them. And now those two forms of protection have collided. One hidden truth has exposed both of them. There is tenderness in this revelation, but there is also tension because your soulmate now wants to know more. They are beginning to feel that the story they were given was incomplete. The person who told them what you did may have hesitated when they asked follow-up questions. That hesitation did not go unnoticed. Your soulmate saw it. They asked something more specific. There was a pause. A look. A change in tone. And in that tiny moment, your soulmate realized there was another detail being withheld. Something connected to what happened afterward. Something connected to you. That is when their curiosity turned into urgency. They wanted the entire truth. Not the softened version. Not the convenient version. Not the version designed to keep everyone comfortable. They wanted to know what happened to you after you protected them. And the answer is the part that has not fully reached them yet. Because, my beloved child, every act of hidden protection creates two stories. There is the story of the person who was spared something, and there is the story of the person who quietly absorbed what remained. Your soulmate knows the first story now. They do not yet know the second. They know something was prevented from reaching them. They do not know what reached you instead. And that missing piece is where the next revelation waits. But before it arrives, understand this: the universe of this story is not asking you to become someone who endlessly sacrifices yourself for others. True love is not self-erasure. Heaven does not ask you to prove your worth through suffering. What matters here is not pain. What matters is intention. You acted from a place of care, and now that hidden intention is finally visible. There were probably times you wondered whether it mattered. Times you thought, they will never know. Perhaps part of you believed that because they would never know, they would never understand you. Maybe that hurt more than you admitted. To be loved is powerful, but to be understood is something different. There may have been nights when you wished they could see into your heart for 5 minutes and understand why you made certain choices. You did not want worship. You did not want them to owe you. You simply wanted them to know you were never as careless with their heart as circumstances made you appear. Now, slowly, they are beginning to know. And the most extraordinary part is that you are not the one convincing them. Truth is doing that work. This matters because words spoken in defense of yourself can be doubted. But truth discovered independently has a different force. Your soulmate is hearing things you never used as arguments. They are learning details you never offered as evidence. That is why their reaction is so strong. They cannot say you manipulated the story. You were not even in the room. They cannot say you told them because you wanted a response. You remained silent. They cannot say you exaggerated your role. Someone else brought your name into the conversation. And that makes the revelation difficult to escape. After hearing what happened, your soulmate did something subtle. It may seem small from the outside, but spiritually and emotionally it carries weight. They stopped defending their old opinion of you. Someone may have said something like, "Maybe you misunderstood them." Normally your soulmate might have responded quickly. They might have explained why they believed what they believed. They might have listed the things that hurt them. They might have insisted that the situation was more complicated. This time, they did not. They became quiet. Because deep inside, they knew something had changed. They could no longer be completely certain that their version of events was the full truth. That uncertainty is not weakness. It is an opening. And openings are where understanding enters. Your soulmate is standing in one now. They are remembering a particular expression on your face from the past. At the time, they did not understand it. You had just heard something or realized something, and for a second, you looked as though you were carrying words you could not release. They remember asking whether you were okay. You said you were fine. You were not lying to deceive them. You were trying not to make your burden their burden. Now they are wondering whether that moment was connected. That memory keeps returning. The way you looked away. The way your voice changed. The way you became unusually calm. The way you tried to move the conversation somewhere safer. It makes sense now. And when memories suddenly make sense, emotions can arrive with enormous force. Your soulmate's reaction may not be visible to you yet. Do not assume silence means nothing is happening. Some of the biggest emotional shifts occur before any message is sent, before any call is made, before anyone knows what to say. They may be sitting with this. They may be struggling to find words worthy of the revelation. Because what do you say to someone after discovering they protected you without asking you to notice? Thank you can feel too small. I'm sorry can feel incomplete. Why didn't you tell me cannot undo the silence. And I understand now may not even be fully true yet. So they are searching. Not merely for a sentence. For courage. Because this truth is forcing them toward another truth they have avoided. They still care. Maybe more than they allowed themselves to admit. If your hidden act meant nothing to them, they could hear it and move on. They could appreciate it politely and continue with their day. But that is not what happened. Their heart reacted before their logic had time to organize itself. That reaction revealed something. A connection they tried to reduce has not become as small as they claimed. A feeling they tried to place in the past still responds to your name. A door they believed they had closed may not have been locked at all. And yet the most important revelation is still coming. Because as your soulmate kept asking questions, the person speaking to them finally said something that changed their expression completely. They said there was a reason you never told them. A very specific reason. Your soulmate asked, "What reason?" The answer did not come immediately. There was hesitation again. Not because it was dangerous. Not because anyone wanted to frighten them. But because the explanation would reveal something incredibly vulnerable about your heart at that time. Something you never confessed. Something you may have believed would remain hidden forever. Your soulmate leaned closer. Their voice softened. "Tell me." And when the first few words of that explanation finally came out, their eyes changed. Because the reason you protected them was not what they had assumed. It was bigger, more personal, and connected to a promise you had quietly made inside yourself long before they ever discovered what you had done. They have only heard the beginning of that promise. The rest is about to change everything.